I'm Christina Rea, and welcome to Breaking Out of Breaking In, a practical filmmaking podcast about taking your creative career into your own hands and making great work that gets seen without playing the Hollywood game.
Or at least while changing the rules. Hey, I'm Brie Castellini, your other co-host, and today we are breaking down season 3 of our podcast. Welcome back, everybody. We're also giving a quick State of the Union for the industry right now. Spoiler alert, going bad. Bad state of this union. And also, later this episode, we will be interviewing our lovely season 1 and 2 editor, Ezra Li. But before we dive in, don't forget, we always release bonus content for every episode of this podcast over on patreon.com/breakingoutpod. So if you want to support us and the podcast and get yourself even more information and resources, definitely head over there. You can subscribe for as little as $1 a month or as little as $3 if you want to start getting access to our archive. Without further ado, Happy New Year, Christina.
Happy New Year.
So we figured we'd start the podcast this season with just some updates and kind of just level setting for the podcast, for the industry, for ourselves. So in terms of changes, structural changes to the podcast that will affect you, our lovely, lovely listeners, the first thing is that, at least for the foreseeable future, season 3 is going to be monthly rather than bi-weekly. So we will be releasing 1 episode a month unless something amazing happens and we decide we want to start regularly updating more often. But just because of a lot of stuff going on, it seemed like it made the most sense to focus a lot on fewer episodes this season.
Yep.
We are also going to try out a new thing where we have segments. Apparently segments are really popular in podcasting. And I don't know, maybe we'll put the segments on TikTok. Maybe we'll have to do TikTok, but having segments will make it easier to do so. So the 2 segments that we pitch to our patrons and seem to resonate the most are a segment called Buds, which are upcoming things that we're excited about. Sometimes they will be related to media and our careers. Sometimes they'll just be things that we're looking forward to in general. And then we are also going to be doing a drama alert segment. Now that we're doing fewer episodes, it means that we're probably going to be recording closer to when the episodes actually come out, which means that we can be slightly more topical. So instead of waiting for the end of the year to talk about screenwriting Twitter drama, or I don't know, screenwriting Mastodon drama now, screenwriting Hive social drama, screenwriting Post.news drama, we will be reporting on it as it happens, relatively speaking. Who knows? Mm-hmm. I haven't noticed any new drama recently, and Christina, I know you're off social media more than I am these days. Are you aware of any drama alert that we can give people?
Yeah, I keep sort of disabling my Twitter and then coming back before it deletes. That's sort of the pattern that I'm in currently. Sure. But I did notice that people were doing satire of a tweet going around asking if AI art is art, and then someone tweeted, "Is TV writing art?" And then it went viral, and a lot of people took it seriously. And,
oh God!
And so there was some discourse, but I didn't pay too much attention to what.
I didn't see that.
I'll have to find it. It was a week ago.
Fair enough. Yeah, the only thing I've seen going around is not necessarily screenwriting Twitter drama, but is something that we'll probably talk about in a bit, just about the recent everything fuckery going on where people canceling shows after they've been shot but before they air, canceling shows after 1 season. And there's been a lot of prominent showrunners doing threads about this is why it's more important than just well, you got paid, didn't you? There's a lot of other things to consider. So that's what's been kind of in the ether and discussion, but that's not drama. That's something that everyone pretty much agrees on is bad. And then just people who are outside of the industry being why are you whining, Hollywood elites? Which is, of course, a really productive discourse strategy. But for our bud section of this first episode of the season, Christina, do you have any buds?
Yeah, I don't have any career or media related buds that come to mind. It's too early, and it's been a weird start to the year for me. I mean, I broke my toe 15 minutes ago, so it's a weird start.
Yeah, if you're noticing something different about this recording session, it's because Christina is in excruciating pain.
Yes, but so friends of the pod, Kelsey and Danny, had a baby named River on November 1st, and I have seen them since he was born, but they're coming to to my house next weekend with Kelsey's mom, who's visiting from Switzerland. And in the 12 years that I've known Kelsey, I've never actually met her mom. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a lovely bud. Yeah, my bud is my birthday's coming up January 31st. Send me money or Patreon subscriptions. And inspired actually by Christina and her husband, my husband and I are no longer giving each other birthday gifts in the traditional sense because our birthdays are so close to Christmas, and also we've been together so long we don't need to be getting each other gifts that often. not in that that's not productive. So what we started doing is doing trips and experiences. So last year for his birthday we went to San Diego. And so for my birthday, we are going to Joshua Tree, not only to use our new National Parks pass, but also as like a little mini writer's retreat. And who knows, maybe on that trip, I will also start making progress on Christina and I's co-written feature script that we're working on.
Yes. I guess that's a bud, right?
Yeah.
Except that we did an outline and then both failed to actually start writing.
Well, we finished our outline at the very end of last year, right before I was going home for Christmas, and there's been other stuff, but we have an outline and we can start writing whenever we want.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm excited about that.
I'm definitely excited about that, and who knows, maybe we'll have some cool stuff to let you guys know about later on. So then, just in terms of general industry state of the union stuff, I just wrote down a handful of things that have been on my mind as a person ostensibly interested in having a career in Hollywood, etc. There might be an impending writer's strike, which makes it hard to feel positive about entering the industry at this point. I don't know. I guess I could be a scab. Maybe that's how I'll get my first job. That's a joke. Not go unions. Absolutely don't be a scab. But things are tense for some of the reasons that we already kind of talked about. The shows that are getting canceled after they've already shot, movies getting canceled after they've already been shot just for tax write-off purposes, shows not getting renewed even with really positive reviews after the first season. Ezra actually in our upcoming interview with him at the end of this talks about the show 1899, which apparently was very good, but got canceled after one season. And that's just more and more common. Not only are TV seasons getting shorter and the writer's room's getting smaller, but also they have less longevity than ever before. And so it's what are we doing, guys? What's the point? Why are these executives in media? There have to be other industries that they could be doing puckery in that could make them more money, because if they are exclusively motivated by profits, there has got to be a better way for them to do this than fucking around with entertainment. You know what I mean? It's why are you doing this to this industry? Go away. Go do something else.
Yeah.
That being said, the one bright spot, I guess a bud for me, is that the show Minx, which I really enjoyed. I think it had some things that I would change, but I'm curious to see where they're going with it. Minx got canceled by HBO Max after they had already shot either most or all of season 2, but it recently got picked up by Starz. So Starz has saved Minx at least for the foreseeable future, which is positive, but obviously not every show can get that. And I don't know. Feels like a weird time.
Yeah. I'm glad though, because I wanted to watch it after you liked it so much, and I was pissed off that it was nowhere to be found. So
I know. Did it get taken off HBO Max already?
It did, yeah.
Oh shoot!
Yeah. I tried to watch it last week because I had hit a wall of I had just nothing to watch. I had watched everything there was to watch possible, and was just really annoyed that I couldn't find it anywhere. And I was searching Reddit to see if there was anyone who had any sort of access that didn't involve HBO Max, and no, nothing. So
yeah, it's such a shame because HBO Max had one of the best streaming libraries for a little while. For a tiny blip of time, there was so much good stuff on HBO Max, and then they just jettisoned it for profit. I know they don't care about art, but do they not even care about money? That's the thing, is that so many of these decisions that these executives are making are patently not the way you make money in media. It's so short-sighted that I'm like, is there some kind of conspiracy happening? What the fuck is going on?
I don't know. Doesn't make sense.
Speaking of conspiracies, Twitter's falling apart, and I'm still depressed about it. I don't know if we talked about this on like the main feed or just in Patreon, but we definitely did talk about it like right after Musk took over Twitter, and it's still going bad. And like most of the people that I actually liked on Twitter have left, but haven't really found purchase at any of the other various social media platforms that I am also on against my will, but like nobody's on there. Like the benefit of Twitter was that everyone was there, even like from disparate sort of like communities. Like my digital media journalists were there. They largely still are on Twitter, but many of them have left. The TV writers were on Twitter. Like authors that I followed were on Twitter. My friends were on Twitter. And now like all of those people have splintered. And there doesn't seem to be a landing place that is convenient anymore. And like, I am too old to have 18 different social media platforms open at any given time to stay connected with all of my various communities.
Yeah.
I'm too old.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Twitter when I was using it at like peak crowdfunding and building an audience.
Sure.
But now I just like don't find, even before everything, you know, I was just, even before 2020, I would say I wasn't using it quite as much as I once was. Because I was kind of trying to like value in-person relationships, and then of course the pandemic ruined that. But I just have no energy for Twitter now. It's just exhausting because like it was already exhausting, but now it's exhausting in all these new ways, and yeah, so many people have left that I don't know.
Yeah, it's not worth going back to be honest.
It's not. But it's like I don't want it. It's so important beyond us, like beyond artists connecting. It's so important for information spreading. Like at the end of the day, it was really key to social justice movements that took root over the past really like 5 years. And I think that it's very intentional, you know, Elon Musk buying it and trying to then like stifle things like that. So on one hand, I'm like, I want it to continue because I don't know what could possibly take its place and accomplish that, where like everyone will adopt it the way that they did.
Right.
So yeah, it's just, but on the other hand, it's like I just don't want to be there. It's so toxic that like it doesn't even feel like worth saving. So
no, for sure isn't at this point. And I say this as someone who like was Twitter's number one bitch for a really, really long time. Like the thing that I'm mourning more than anything is a prominent text-based social media platform. Because like the reason, like, you know, I famously hate my phone, so that obviously impacts my interest in apps like Instagram and in Hive Social, which is exclusively app-based right now at the very least. But like also there's so much more effort you have to put into any other kind of social media that requires a video, or, like on TikTok, or you know, an image like on Instagram. Like I don't want to have to always be making Canva graphics. Like I like Canva a lot, but I'm a writer and I liked the ability to be able to post without having to put on any artifice and without having to like do other, like I just want to talk to people.
Yeah, and share like links to blogs and stuff. I agree with that. I'm in this weird space where I'm kind of like wanting to just be a hermit. Like I'm trying to get my film made on a larger scale than it's ever been made before, but I'm also trying to like disappear from existence. Yeah. So it's this like weird mixture. Like I deleted my Facebook at the start of the year, which is I feel really good about. And like Twitter, I'm keeping, like I said, I keep disabling and then coming back because I don't want it to be a situation where they don't want to give me money to make my movie because they're like, no one knows who she is. Because I had over 4,000 followers and so many people have left, but I still have like 3,800. And so I want to be like, people do know who I am. So like, if I need to prove this, I have this. But yeah, and even on Instagram, I don't know. Like I'm just sort of pulling away from social media, but it is so, when I kind of get out of this weird space that I'm in, I imagine I'm going to want to be able to like access an audience again, you know, and like reach new people and make new connections. And with the pandemic and with all of the other things, it's sort of online still is the place for that. And
now that you live so much further away from like a centralized hub.
Right. So, I've got my newsletter, and I think that that's really what artists should be doing as much as possible right now, is just getting emails, because who the hell knows, like these platforms could be taken down at any moment. And if that's your only access to people, then you're starting from scratch. And so,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
but having direct access to people rather than relying on it. Because like when I thought I was doing a good job of that, and then as Twitter started to like break down, I was realizing, oh, fuck, I actually don't know how to contact like half of the people that I know on here who have become really important to me. That's not good.
yeah. So, it's a weird space, weirdness starting this year.
Yeah, I mean, even Hollywood is breaking out of breaking in at this point. Like, what is
Right.
what is in anymore? I was talking to someone the other day. I don't think it was you, Christina, but it was somebody where we were talking about how like we feel like we were 2 to 3 years late on having like really solid careers, or solid as a career in entertainment can be. Like I was 2 or 3 years late to making a web series back when web series were really popular. I was at like the tail end of that sort of web series industrial complex where like people were getting deals and like making a bunch of connections that way. And I was like 2 to 3 years late moving to LA and capitalizing on stuff and like meeting people here and maybe making 1 or 2 projects in LA versus having all of my production work based in New York before moving here. And there I was like a couple of years too late for like a couple of the shows that I think I would have been perfect on, so I feel like I'm just 2 to 3 years late, and it's a really frustrating position to be in. And you and I talked earlier, Christina, because you sent me a tweet that was like calling people who want to be writer's assistants, and I was like, yeah, I know at the beginning of this podcast I was like, yeah, I'd be open to being a writer's assistant, and now I'm like, nope, I don't think I'm there anymore. I might be. I mean, if a really cool opportunity comes along, I'm not going to snub my nose at it. But like other life circumstances have led to me kind of needing to have the regular income and like remote job access that my current position allows me, and that a writer's assistant would not. I have other priorities now, and because it's such a volatile time to be in the industry at all, let alone at like the entry level, it just seems like truly the worst time ever to take on one of those jobs, worse than even before. And I'm 31 years old, or I'm about to be 31 years old. I don't think I have it in me at the moment to take that big of a risk.
Yeah.
And that feels like a weird thing to admit this far into the podcast, and maybe is not as hopeful as I would like to start the year as, but I don't know. My books are going well, so that's something.
Yeah. It's tough. I feel like it's sort of when I think about how hard the world is right now, and thinking about like, oh, if only I had been born during this period. But there's really no period that I can pinpoint where I'm like, oh, I wish I lived then, as a woman of color, as someone who didn't grow up with money. Like there's no point where I was like, oh, things were better then. Like they were for white men.
Sure.
So like in so many ways the world is a better place to be living in right now, but it's also just exhausting and awful, and still awful in all the various injustices, in a more public way. So you're like hit with it constantly, even though in theory it's actually getting better, even though it's still so awful. And I feel the industry is the same way, where it's like, I'm nostalgic for a point of being a director where you got to really just like break in and make movies and not have to be a brand and not have to like hustle the way that we have to hustle, and that there was like an actual path in some ways. But then I'm like, but no, not really for me. Like I never would have actually had a chance in that old system. And things are so much better now for women, for people of color, for women of color, even though they're still so fucking awful. And like the numbers are so awful. But it's still so much better than it ever was, but it's still so hard and impossible. And so it's like this weird kind of like, we're moving forward, but it doesn't feel like anything's really changing. And I'm wishing for the way things used to be, but if they existed with the progress that we have now, and like that reality doesn't exist. I do get the feeling a couple of years
Yeah, because I'm not saying like, oh yeah, I would have really killed it in the 1950s, but like
no, totally. But like even just thinking about, because I made a web series in 2013, and I feel like I was pretty early, and we got a lot of attention. We got an IndieWire critics pick, and that was like, and real indies very rarely even get recognized by IndieWire, and we were on BuzzFeed and whatever. Yes, Broad City was 2 years before that. But I think like most of the web series that really took off and turned into something, if you look at the class of those creators, there's usually something there. Like there's usually some sort of connection there that they have, that if you were just making like the same series that you made but a couple years earlier, it still probably wouldn't have gotten the same attention from the gatekeepers, because you didn't have that class access.
To be clear, when I'm thinking about my like web series trajectory, I'm like honestly less imagining like Issa Rae, Broad City folks, and more thinking about like the tiny period of time that like CISO existed, or like Go 90 existed, like where and even the like, half an hour that Quibi was open. Like a lot of the Quibi people who were not like regular Hollywood people were like YouTubers and people who had web series and who had like made a name for themselves in digital first spaces. And, obviously Quibi died immediately, but like a lot of people got a lot of like Snapchat originals was a thing for a while, and technically still might be, you know what I mean? And like, I know a lot of those creators, while they don't have traditional careers, at least like have footholds and credits and got paid for their work at some point.
Sure, yeah.
But also like those ended too. So that's why I'm like 2 or 3 years ago, I would have had at least more credits, and I don't know, maybe more connections. Yeah. This is all speculative and nonsense. But
it's funny, actually. It's funny because we released Kelsey, our web series, me and Kelsey Rauber, in 2013, originally on blip.tv, which was like a short-lived platform, and they were ad-based, and they had really good ad revenue. And we, on our web series, in like the first, I would say 3 months that it was around that we were on it, because we were on the tail end of it before it was bought by YouTube and then basically buried. We made like $900.
Oh, nice.
On episodes in 3 months, and that's like a lot, considering that we had at that point maybe 100,000 views, not even probably, but close to. And we made the whole series on $5,000, and so it was like not breaking even, but it was something. And then like we moved over to YouTube, which is also ad based, and we also had almost 100,000 views and haven't seen a dime, and so it's like a very different. Had we maybe like 2 years earlier gotten on Blip TV and had that ad revenue going for 3 years, it would have been a different story. So yeah, like I do see your point in that regard.
But also, how depressing is it that we're nostalgic for having a like 2-year career, even acknowledging that it would still be over now? Like, hey, Hollywood, it's fucking bleak right now. Get your shit together. There are people who want to tell cool stories, and we will take any scrap. Make a short form comedy website that'll last 2 years, and I will be thrilled. Where is my MTV Other? Where's IFC's Comedy Crib? Like I know truly so many of these fucking websites that just like don't exist or barely exist anymore. I'm like, this is such useless knowledge. I'm furious. Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It's funny, random little thing on my mind. This coming week is the 10-year anniversary of shooting my first feature summit.
Oh,
and
wow.
So I've been like doing a lot of kind of reflecting on a decade of this and how much I learned, and how much has changed. Like so little has changed in some ways, but then so much has changed about, I guess, like where I saw myself and where I see myself. And in some ways I'm like, I think about the things that I've been really annoyed with, not annoyed, but I guess frustrated with in this development process that I've been in with my new feature that I'm hoping will go through. But I think about like 10 years ago, that Christina Rhea would have been like, holy shit, like you're having meetings with these people, like these people are reading your script. And so I'm trying to like live in that, I guess, like
have the
even
perspective.
Yeah, even though it's been frustrating in me now, it's like it might not even end up being anything. Like it could just live in this limbo and then that's it. Like something very too similar comes out and it just gets shelved and all that stuff is frustrating and scary and I'm trying to live in like what I just said, the sort of past version of me would be so excited about getting to this point, but also just trying to like have it be a learning experience and a growing experience regardless, because yeah, the industry is like so shit and so unpredictable and but so much can change so quickly too, so you just don't you never really know. So I guess I'm just trying to like appreciate the little things as I've got them.
I think that's a good place to start the year at the very least. You know, there's not much in our control, but what we can control is trying to keep things in perspective, not take things for granted, and continue to chase the muse wherever it will take us. So I mean that's kind of all I had. I also wanted to mention that Sherlock Holmes is fully in the public domain, so that's relevant to not that many people, but hey, maybe you didn't hear yet. Sherlock Holmes can be whatever you want him to be. Sweet little boy. And the Doyle estate can't be like, Sherlock Holmes actually sucks and hates women. You can't write that he likes women. That was a later characterization. It's like, any characterization's cool now, baby. Yeah, I'm not doing anything with Sherlock Holmes. I just I saw that recently and I was like, oh, that's nice. That's good to know. Maybe someday.
That is good to know.
Hashtag Sherlock Holmes loves women. Anything else that you want to talk about in this very first kind of chaotic episode of the year before we get into Ezra's interview?
I don't think so, but we should mention that Ezra's not going to be our editor anymore.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why. I mean, we've been trying to interview Ezra since like last year. I think it was probably good that we waited until now because he's in post-production for a really cool film, and he wouldn't have been.
And I think he never wanted to be on because he never wanted to have to edit his own voice. So.
That's true too. Yes. So, but as we've been going down to a single episode a season, we are unfortunately couldn't continue to also justify having an editor that was separate from Christina and I. So for the foreseeable future, it's once again a two-hander here on the Booby Pod.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
so yeah, new year and let's talk to Ezra.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1. Perfect.
Oh, I know the clap. I'm
intimately familiar with the clap.
Yes.
Gross. Welcome, Ezra.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here on the other side.
The other side.
Excited to have you.
I know. I'm like, yes, I made it.
Finally, you clawed your way up. We've been like, no, Ezra, you can't be on the podcast before.
Exactly.
Truly been horrible, but you finally earned it. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? If we were at a networking event and you were introducing yourself, what would you say?
God, networking events.
Yeah,
honestly,
immediately putting you into like the most traumatic
trauma. I'm like, last time I went to a
ever.
networking event, I was like hiding in the corner. I'm like, okay, I gotta do this. All right, yeah, so I'm Ezra Li. I was editing this podcast, Breaking Out and Breaking In, for the last couple seasons. I'm an LA-based artist, primarily focused on acting and filmmaking. I would say I'm newly wearing the writer's hat. That came from a short that I've been working on, which we can get into in a little bit. But it's hard because like all my friends are like, "You're a writer," and I'm like, I mean, I'd like to think so, but I have 10 pages to show, and that's it.
Sure.
So I've just been, I think, trying to find ways to fulfill my creative appetite, and writing has started to become one of those that has like really filled that void, especially when with acting it's just like audition, nothing happens, and this feels like I have more agency. But yeah, I went to college here in Los Angeles. I'm in LA, and I graduated in 2018, which is also almost now 5 years ago. And then I moved to New York for a couple of years, and then the pandemic hit, which we all know about. And then I ended up coming...
Famously over pandemic.
Right, exactly. And then I came back to California, and I've been back in LA since last October, so just, a year and some change.
Okay, cool. What did you study in college?
So, I was originally a theater major, and I did not like the program. My school was really interesting because I had like a BFA program and then a BA program, and like I opted to, like I wanted to do the BA program, but it just wasn't what I had imagined. So I was actually gonna I was gonna transfer to NYU, but then that was just so goddamn expensive, and I couldn't rationalize a theater degree and take on that much debt. So I ended up taking a gap year, and during that gap year, I was like, fuck acting. I am not going to be an actor. This is stupid. It's indulgent. What am I doing for the world? And I, at the time, got really into, the idea of journalism.
Sure.
So when I got back to school, I was like, I'm going to go into journalism, blah, 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 blah. I took Journalism 101, and I fucking hated it. It was terrible. And, my school was the school that I went to was very traditional journalism route. So it's you do this and then you go to, middle of nowhere for 7 years to then maybe go to Dallas to then in 20 years get to New York. And I'm like, that sounds fucking awful. No, thank you. So I ended up actually just falling into communication because it was through the same school. Okay. And I am so grateful that I did, because I know communication can get a lot of shit for being the easy major, but I think it's one of those things where it's it's what you make it. And once I discovered that I actually had an interest in it, I really threw myself into the studies, specifically focusing on representation in the media and the arts. And it was really interesting because at that time I had quit acting. I was I don't want to do this, or even filmmake. Well, but Hollywood, the industry, I was this is too much. But then with communication, I took a couple classes with this professor, and it really kind of made me think about stories in a different way and the impact that it has. And I was like, wow, stories are important. They do matter. They can actually change things. And I'm mixed race. I'm half Chinese, half Jewish, and queer. And I think I got to really examine my identity and how that kind of is reflected in the media and what we see, and realize that it's not really reflected. And that kind of sparked something within me. And I was like, wow, I do want to be a storyteller. And it kind of just somehow little things here and there, the world kind of nudged me back into acting and filmmaking, and here I am doing it, trying to do it.
Here you are.
Yeah.
So you were alluding earlier to a project recently that you've been working on. So can you tell us about what that project is and what its current status is?
Yes. So you both know about this project, and you guys were very helpful with this project because I had done a fundraising campaign via Seed and Spark, and got some great advice from you and my other friend Zev, who you guys know.
Friend of the pod, Zev. Always.
Friend of the pod, yeah. That's actually how we all got connected originally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, Zev recommended you.
And Zev was the reason we decided to have a podcast. Because they were I'll listen to you talk.
Yeah. So how it started was I took a playwriting course about 1.5 years ago through East West Players, which is this amazing Asian American theater in Los Angeles. And I was starting to write this kind of solo show. And when it ended, it was just more of this idea of a character and a story that I then kind of translated into a screenplay, a short film. And so I actually have changed the title. So it was originally called X. It is now called The Variable. But it follows X, that's the character, an ethnically ambiguous actor who has to take on some outlandish adjustments during a casting session before they finally try it his way. and the outlandish adjustments are him having to change his ethnicity on a dime. So it's like, it's silly. I think it tackles some serious stuff, but like more like through a silly lens. And it alternates between two worlds, that of the script he's auditioning for and then the literal casting room. So it kind of goes back and forth. I launched the crowdfunding campaign, and I couldn't have done it without you two, and I fucking hated it, and I will never do it again in my life. It was terrible. For a month, I was not a human. And I wasn't even, I mean, my goal was 15K, which I reached, which was amazing. And I know that like 15K is a feasible amount, but it's still a lot of work. And it was a weird month. Like, it was just like, I felt like it was my full-time job. Just making sure everything is just, I felt I had to be so shameless on the internet, and I hate that. I felt weird and like, I felt dirty, and I had to just push through that. But, as much as I hated it and will never do it again because it was like one of the worst experiences, it was also one of the most fulfilling experiences. Like, I am so proud that I was able to accomplish that. And like, I don't say that lightly. It wasn't an easy task, and it was really cool to see people come together, and like, people came out of the woodworks to donate. I had people from like high school that I hadn't seen in like a decade be like, "Oh my God, I saw blah, 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 blah." I was like, "You did?" Sick, thank you, like, cool. But yeah, so I did the campaign, and then the next nightmare was scheduling. So one of my actors is in an HBO show, so we basically had to get producer approval from that. And that was just a back and forth for a long time. And then my DP was also New York based. So I had to fly, and that actor is New York based. So I had to like figure out a time when I could fly those two people out based on that HBO show's schedule. And we ended up being able to slot the time because they get a week off for the Emmys. So I was like, sick. And the reason he was able to come was because he wasn't nominated. So he wasn't invited.
Oh my God.
I know.
Weird
like,
silver linings.
Exactly. I was like, all right. I'm like, ooh, sorry. But I was so happy because like, now you can be in my short film. But yeah, that was great. And it was just a 3-day shoot. So I've done one short film with our friend of the pod, Zev. And that was much more of like an educational experience, I feel like. Just to learn more about indie production, co-writing, co-directing. Also, it was much more, the first short film was called Reasons to Stay. Was much more of like Zeb's story, and then I kind of came on to help tell it. But this film, The Variable, is very much like my story, my baby, my passion project. And it was really interesting. So like, I think about a week before going into like actual production, my DP had flown out and we were just going over stuff, and like it was messy, and I was like, I don't think I want to direct after this. And then when we got to set, I don't know, it just like, it all kind of just fell into place, and it was like a magical experience. And it was, so the first day of shooting, it was in the casting room, and basically they're all like on one side of the room, and then I'm on the other side of the room. And because of that, we actually filmed coverage of all the other actors for the first half of the day before I was even on camera. So I actually just I was like saying my lines, but I was really just directing for the first half of the day, and it was really exhilarating. And I was like, wait, I love this. This is so cool. Mm-hmm. This is so fun. But yeah, and then we had 2 overnights, and that was a long weekend. But yeah, we are in post-production. I actually just met with my editor yesterday, and we have a first rough cut with director's notes that I'm actually going to start sending out this coming week, which I might send to you guys and get notes.
Yeah.
Definitely do.
We'd love to. I'm excited to see it because I read the script, so and I think Brie and I both love things that tackle big subjects, but in silly, fun ways. I think that's very up our alley in general, so I'm excited.
Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
definitely. So with this like hellish process, which I think every film is, even the films that like we have the most fun on are a little bit like being in hell. I'm curious if you can impart any sort of like advice on both what you learned through your crowdfunding and also through your production, like especially because these are both your first times doing it. So like if you were talking to you a year ago, what would you tell yourself about crowdfunding and what would you tell yourself about production?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, overall, and this is just kind of corny, but like, do not give up. Number one. I would say specifically with crowdfunding, you know, I was just talking earlier about how like those like ugly, shameful feelings of like putting yourself out on the internet. But it was the first time that I used the internet, specifically Instagram and emails, but specifically Instagram as a tool, an actual tool to help myself. And it was very productive. Like I wasn't just mindlessly scrolling on Instagram. I was actually using it to acquire funding, and it worked. And that was actually a really interesting experience to be like putting away like kind of my ego and those feelings of like how I feel. Like actually people didn't see me like this like beggar for money. People saw me as an artist trying to create work that mattered. And I think took me longer to see that. And so I would say, like, think of it that way to kind of, you know, change your perspective on how you look at that, because that is what it is. You are an artist trying to create something that matters, and, you know, not all of us have all the resources in the world. Nepo babies. And, and it's an honorable task. It really is. It sucks in the moment, but I think also, like, all the best things that are worthwhile are hard.
Yeah.
Production. Make sure you do enough pre-production.
It's good advice. Was there like an aspect of it that you're like, I wish I had thought of this 2 days ago? Like what was the pre-production that was lacking?
Yeah, I will say, so the first day of shooting was arguably the smoothest. It was also a day shoot, but it was interesting because it was the most actors and the most coverage. Basically, like when my DP arrived, we were making a shot list and creating times and shooting schedule, and like we had to scrap like half of our shots. We're like, there's no way. And then we ended up getting every single shot that we wanted the first day. So that was great. But the second day, so basically, in the world of the script, it's kind of this like more like sexy thriller-esque Bond, but like kind of like a parody. But it's like in this like fancy loft. So we were shooting at this like lofted apartment in downtown LA. One, it was just like my producer's friend who was letting us use the space, but we didn't get any like permission from like the building, and we had to shoot in the hallway. So it was just a little hectic. But the first thing that we shot was this very slight fight choreography / intimacy choreography, which I did have an intimacy coordinator, which was super important for me because, you know, I was the actor and director, and I wanted to make sure there wasn't this weird hierarchy for the other actor, and I wanted to make sure that the other actor felt very comfortable. But due to scheduling, I also had recast. There's this character named the leading man that's kind of like the foil of my character, and I had to recast him about like a week or two before production, so we didn't have time for rehearsals that much, but for the fight and intimacy portion we had done nothing. So I basically was like, can you get there an hour early? We're gonna work on stuff, but like, you know, the crew's setting up, and it's obviously, you know, I wasn't sure if he wanted a closed set for the intimacy. It was just like it was a kiss, but once again, I just wanted to make sure everyone felt comfortable. But we are just like, we're running behind schedule. We're coming up with choreography on the fly with the DP. And this was like the start of shooting in this new location. And it was just like, I was like, I'm going to be at my breaking point soon because we're behind schedule. We're not getting the shots that we need. And then we just did, you know? Like, it just happened. But I do think, like, that would have been something that I really wanted to have an actual, like, proper rehearsal or two to just, like, have the choreography down, have the beats down, have the moments down, so that we weren't doing it on the fly. Fortunately, it worked out enough, but I think pre-production is still something that I need to work on. Just, like, have such an, like, bulletproof plan and, like, a contingency for every single thing as well, so that when that happens, because you know it's going to happen, you know exactly what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Because I did not.
I think that's also just, like, growing pains, right? You're so early on, it's your first big project that's your baby, and part of getting better and learning for next time is making mistakes like that, because it's hard to predict what it's going to feel like in the moment when you haven't had that role before.
Totally, yeah. And it was also just, like, funny because, once again, acting and directing. Oh, I also will not act, direct, and write together at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Total nightmare scenario. Absolutely nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
I have done that too, and immediately it was like, fuck this, never again.
Yeah, and it was fun-ish, but, like, I just remember, like, when we'd be like, because, like, I would yell cut, or I would assign someone to yell cut, but there's like all these bloopers of me where I'm just like, I also wore some crazy costumes, so I'm just, like, sitting in, like, crazy costume, I do something, and I'm just, like, sitting, I'm like, all right, let's take it back, reset, or cut, blah, 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 and then it's just, like, back into character, and it's, like, I feel like part of my acting could have been affected by me kind of straddling too many things, which was something to learn.
Totally.
Yeah.
And hopefully you will share some of those images with us so that we can put them out when we put this episode out. I would love to see a still of you in a crazy costume, like, right before you go back into into character.
Yeah, totally.
So I think we're about wrapping up. So I'm just curious about your media consumption, maybe to recommend some stuff to other people. So what is your either favorite movie and TV show, or a recent movie and TV show that you've really enjoyed?
Okay, that's a tough question. I consume so much media. Okay, a couple. I'm gonna say a few things. I'll say a few.
Sure.
That's great.
Okay, so I will say, I think one of my all-time favorite shows is Fleabag. Like, that is up there, like canon for me.
Oh yeah.
Game of Thrones seasons 1 through 6, 7, 8 was where they fucked up. Two shows that I watched in the past year that I really, really liked. Did you guys hear of 1899?
I've heard of it, and I don't know anything about it other than just like
Same.
random screenshots I see on Tumblr.
Did you ever watch Dark? Mm-mm. So Dark is a German show made by these partners, and then they made 1899. 1899, I'm so pissed because Netflix is not renewing it for a second season. It was phenomenal. It was basically just about immigrants traveling from Europe to America on a big ship in 1899, and then mysterious stuff happens. So that was amazing, and I'm sad that they're not renewing it. And then also Young Royals. Have you seen Young
I haven't
Royals?
seen that.
No.
It's like high school, and I normally hate high school shows, but it's so good. These are all foreign shows. That one's a Swedish show. I love foreign media, actually. I consume that a lot.
Okay.
Movies. Okay, I did just watch Top Gun Maverick, and it was really good. And I just watched
I've heard
Matilda,
that.
Matilda the musical last night, and that was phenomenal. It was
I
so
haven't
cute.
watched that yet.
Oh, it was so
Cool.
cute.
I mean, Matilda is just like one of the all-time great just stories.
Yeah.
So every adaptation I have seen of it has been excellent. So
Yeah,
good,
it's
good to know.
It's nice to have a happy ending.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, Ezra, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being our stalwart editor
Yeah.
for our last 2 seasons, and editing out all of the coughs and the whispered, "Sorry, Ezra," every
Yeah.
time something happens.
Of course.
Yes, thank you. What's next for you, and where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So right now we're in post-production. I'm definitely trying to get my short, The Variable, finished sooner rather than later to try and get it on the festival circuit. As I said, I'm trying to wear my writer hat more. So I am working on like a pilot, just like trying to do more of that. And then just auditioning. But yeah, so my probably Instagram's best for me. My Instagram is ezra.li, ezra.li. Pretty simple.
Great.
Well, we will absolutely have that in our episode notes. And thanks again, Ezra, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you guys so much, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks so much to Kelsey Rauber for our theme music, Kaylee Brown for our podcast art, and to all of you for listening. Links to learn more about them and our guest are in our episode description.
And thank you to our Booby VIPs, who are our $10 supporters on Patreon. They are Anthony Epp, Brandy Nicole Payne, Kelsey Rauber, and Norman Steinberg. If you want your name on that list and or you want to have access to all of our bonus resources related to each and every podcast episode we post for free, you can subscribe for as little as $3 to our Patreon at patreon.com/breakingoutpod.